Okay, so this time we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to make a clip browser, but we're going to create the UI in completely written form instead of through a designer Qt template. So this clip browser is going to use, if you remember from a few lessons back, we used Houdini to generate these thumbnails and mobs of our Mixamo mocap data. So we're going to basically create a little browser to use that. Cool. So I'm going to get this going, and then I shall be back. We can go through the code together. Okay, we are back up and running. So the reason I wanted to do this one by hand is because we're dynamically creating those buttons. So it kind of seems actually easier just to do it through running through a loop to generate this sort of grid of images as opposed to trying to do that in the UI. Cool, so let's go down from the top and see what we're doing. So here we're importing a couple of extras just because we need access to the a Q icon to make these thumbnails. So at the top we're doing the same thing we did all previously, and then we're basically just running straight into our logic to actually generate the layout. So here we've got our directory of movies on disk, and we're using our trusty osutils.get files of type to get the MOV files from inside. So all of these files here. Cool. Then we go and create a button group. So a button group is basically just a way to keep track of the buttons in your UI, because in this case it could just be one button, or it could be, in this case, 10, or it could be 100 buttons, depends on what logic you're doing. And then we basically want to connect those dynamically to this function here. So after we've made our button group, we basically start making a grid that loops through our mobs with enumerate so we can keep a track of the index. We then make a font object, so you can actually see it's actually quite tiny, but technically, maybe if we enlarge that, maybe we'll be able to see the writing a bit better. Let's just run that again. You'll be able to see I've actually written out the name of the thing here. It's just a bit neater to have it small, really. Cool, so we make a font object, we then make a tool button. We do this instead of a regular button because we can actually then define to put where the text goes on the button. So in this case we want to put it underneath there. We then set the text and the font. We then make an icon, so we use the thumbnails we've generated in the Houdini script earlier. We then add this thumbnail, set the icon size so we can set that to be bigger or smaller depending on what we needed. That was just a good size for this screen. And then we add a grid widget layout. We basically go through and we say, let's run that again. So as you get to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then I want you to start over again. So I set our cross values to 0 again, and then add 1 to your down so that you go down 1 and go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, down, 1, 2, 3, 4, down, etc. Basically, because with the grid layout, you basically need to give it the widget, so the button we're passing it in, and then a location. So here we're just lining them up next to each other and below each other. So then you set that layout, and then finally we just call it to show it. And then this key click here is basically, because we're storing those buttons as we go through into a list, then we can read the MOV file basically off of the text. It's kind of like a little sneaky trick to get the correct text out of the button basically. And then yeah, we just use the default open on Mac. I think it's XD, I can't remember what it is. It's a similar kind of thing on Linux, but basically whatever your default operator, or ask your OS to open this MOV file with whatever its default setting is. and then this is exactly the same as we've had in all the previous ones. But for instance now, if we have a look at this and we just click on it, we've got our little MOV browser, which is pretty cool. So next we'll take a look at quickly just modifying this and then adding and bringing this into maybe a couple of programs, so maybe inside Maya and Houdini, and showing how we can use those inside the tool.